Well, if it's a beautiful spring day, this must be northern Italy, and we're now a little bit out of town, out of Modena town, following nice precise instructions to a very little known site of what we believe to be an amazing collection of Maserati racing cars. But we don't know much more than that, do we, Nigel? It's we've kind of heard about this, but we don't know what to expect, really.
No, I mean it was a collection built up by Alessandro Di Tommaso long ago, and he decided he wanted to sell them, and he kind of hoped that, you know, the state would buy them as a, you know, for the pride of Italy and all the rest of it, and there was no interest, and which amazed him. But he then got in touch with one of the major auction houses in London. I can't remember if it was Christie's or Sotheby's or whichever it was, and the collection was going to be sold off bit by bit, so that, you know, one car would have finished up in Melbourne and another one, you know, in San Francisco, another in Bangkok, and so on. And at that point, real Italian enthusiasts, Maserati enthusiasts here in Italy, were outraged at the thought, and it was a big campaign. We have to save somehow. We have to save this collection for the nation. Whereupon this fellow Signor Panini,
which basically means Mr. Sandwiches.
Mr. Sandwiches stepped forward and said, "Okay, I buy the lot." And so what we're going to this afternoon is called the Panini Collection. It is a private collection, but it is regarded very much as the sort of, if you like, the official Maserati museum. So I've heard so much about it, and I can't wait.
And we love Maserati, don't we? Because it was, well, apart from anything else, it's synonymous with Sterling Moss at some point in his career. And the 250F was the quintessential front-engine racing car, really.
Grand Prix car, yeah. And to me,
you're biased there, Nigel, because that's only because Chris Amon raced one once.
Well, he did, but also, and my great hero when I was a kid, Jean Barrow, was a Maserati factory driver. But there was always, I remember Dennis Jenkinson saying to me once, and I entirely agreed with him, head is Ferrari, heart is Maserati. and I, to me, there was always a greater romance about Maserati than about Ferrari.
But let's get one thing straight here. We're kind of talking Maserati up to about, what, 1967. They lost the plot a bit after 67.
They did indeed.
So we're talking the 50s and the 60s.
Yes,
well, 30s, 40s, 50s and 60s.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the road cars, you know, before they lost the plot, you know, like the 3500 GT, the 5000 GT, they were just pieces of sculpture. They were. And
it's interesting here.
Glorious to behold.
It's interesting because this is a farm, basically. We see lots of very nice cows there, doing their thing, excellent, and a nice vintage historic steamroller, also great to see.
Yeah.
More cars, but this is where we believe the collection is. Ombre seems to be the word that we need to follow in order to find the right place. And nice gun there.
There's the Maserati Trident over there on the.
Ah, yes. Okay, so we're getting
building.
A bit warmer.
Yeah.
And there's a gentleman over there.
And here's a collection of vintage tractors.
Yes, over here, a collection of vintage tractors, which is a bit of a specialised collector's item. But having said that, oh, excellent! Look, they're all numbered and chassis number.
Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, look, we got some Fiat 500s down at the end here. Possibly in need of a little bit of restoration, but nonetheless original. No question about that.
Yep.
Right. Well, let's go and that wasn't me stalling. That was one of these modern fandangled Lancias that turns its engine off every time we decide to go to zero. Well, Nigel, it's a bit of an Aladdin's cave here. It's there's no 300S, which is a little bit of a disappointment.
Which is odd.
Yeah.
Or a 450S, or for that matter, you know, an original shape birdcage.
We think there's a slightly odd-shaped bird cage over there, the streamliner.
This was the last.
Yeah,
I think
actually,
it was sort of last sort of model of the birdcage. Yeah.
But we do have some juicy equipment here, though, and this 250F. It's the V12, which makes it a 57.
Well,
car.
this is I mean, Maserati played around with the V12 engine in '57. He'd only actually raced once when Barra drove it at Monza, and various people tried it in practice. Fangio did, Shell did, Barra did earlier in the season. In fact, Fangio tried it at Monaco. And found he literally couldn't, the station hairpin, it literally wouldn't pick up out of there. It was so terribly short of torque that it just stumbled and
Which
died.
is surprising, really. You would imagine it would
Well,
be the
you
other
would,
way.
yeah, no, absolutely. But it was a real all or nothing engine. So it was fine for Monza where Barra drove. It didn't last, but it was very, very quick while it did. But this is.
Do you think that was another example of the car being much quicker than Barra? Because Barra is not very highly rated, is he, as a pure talent?
Let's not be silly. Barra drove the wheels off it, and in fact, I mean, and led a lot of the way until the car broke.
Why did you like Jean Barra so much, Nigel?
Because I just thought he for a young kid, he personified to me everything a racing driver should be. He wouldn't have flourished in a PR generation. Barra. He was just my idea of he was a kind of, in many ways, he was a kind of European AJ Foyt in some respects.
But he wouldn't have flourished either in the nutritionist age of and sports psychologist age of racing drivers either, one suspects.
No, I think probably not. No. I mean, in fact, at Reims in 1959, he got left at the start because the clerk of the course, the idiotic Toto Roche, dropped the flag standing in the middle of the road right in front of Jean's car. So he stalled, and then was left by the rest. And this was before his home crowd. You can imagine. And he drove flat out. I think he got up to second actually. And then the engine went, and after the race, Romolo Tavoni, the Ferrari team manager, accused him of over-revving, which he undoubtedly had done. And so Barra just felled him with a single punch.
As you would.
As you would.
As you say, a sort of European AJ Foyt, no question.
Yeah. But he was just a no-nonsense race driver,
And the 250F, in many ways, was a no-nonsense racing car.
He was. I mean, if you ask me over the sort of history of Grand Prix racing to come up with a single iconic Grand Prix car, the 250F is the one I would choose. I think it was, apart from it was such a beautiful thing, but also it lent itself to the sort of driving everybody loves to see. You think of Fangio down the hill at Rouen on full opposite lock at 150 miles an hour.
What was it that Gilles said about racing cars and sliding?
Well, Gilles quite seriously said to me one day, there is something wrong with racing when sliding costs you time.
It's absolutely right.
I thought nobody ever put it better than that.